Welcome to the Dental Team Podcast. I'm your host, Kira Dent, and I have this crazy idea that maybe I could combine a doctor and a team member's perspective because let's face it, dentistry can be a challenging profession with those two perspectives. I've been a dental assistant, treatment coordinator, scheduler, biller, office manager, regional manager, practice owner, and I have a team of traveling consultants where we have traveled to over 165 different offices coaching teams. Yep, we don't just understand you, we are you. Our mission is to positively impact the world of dental, and I believe that this podcast is the greatest way I can help elevate teams, grow VIP experiences, reduce stress, and create A-teams. Welcome to the Dental Team Podcast. Hello, Dental Team listeners. This is Kira, and you guys, I'm so excited for Consultant Takeover. Guys, that was me attempting to sing into this microphone for you, and I hope you loved it. Today, Consultant Takeover. Grab your pens, grab your notebooks, bringing in the heat today. And as always, thanks for listening. And I'll catch you next time on the Dental Team Podcast.
Back at it again, Britt. Here we are.
Last time.
I know. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love seeing your face. Again, I will say it every time. I'm so happy we do it this way. It's just so much fun. How are you today? How's your world? I feel like you've got extra pups at home today. You are like dog anting it up over there, and I love it. How's it going?
It's going good. I mean, always a good day when we get to be on video together, 100%. And then, I'm a dog aunt. We call them all, most of them are pugs, and we call those ones puggins. So,
that's cute.
I don't have a pug today.
That's cute. What kind of dog do you have with you? I assumed it was one of the puggins.
It wasn't a puggin, but it's a blue heeler. My brother has a blue heeler, Andy. She's
so
a great
beautiful.
Dog. She's extremely obedient, very opposite from Birdie, my dog, does pretty good, but she's a Labradoodle, and people will win her over every time, and she will not listen if there is someone that she can go be friends with. So
I have come to the conclusion that doodles live in their own world 100% of the time, and they just do what they want. Sometimes that aligns with what you wanted them to do, and sometimes it doesn't. And they're just like, there's a butterfly, I'm chasing the butterfly.
100%. Birdie is who she is, and I do love that about her, but it's a little frustrating sometimes. But
I love it.
It's hot in Arizona, as you know. It is summertime, so I did take them out for a midday little break, and now they're just lying here trying to cool off from being outside because they're spoiled dogs.
Good. That's perfect. Well, I love that. I love that you've got the dogs today. Maybe they'll make an appearance. You know, my cats sometimes climb around behind me, so we will see. But that
when it happens,
especially when she decides to climb my back. That's always great. It only happens when I'm doing Zoom calls with practices. And I'm like, it's totally fine. Her claws are great. It feels wonderful.
Doesn't hurt at all.
Not at all. No, she's a peach. She's staring at me. So today I thought we're kind of prepping for the end of the year, right? We get halfway done with the year, and then we're prepping for the end of the year. That's just kind of the way time flows, especially in
already.
I know. It just happens. Like, especially in dental, I feel like our time just flies all the time. So I'm kind of thinking of ways that we can prep our teams to expand on what they've done this year, next year. Because by the time this releases, it's going to be really kind of prep time for next year. And I think one of those areas is something we talk about a lot. We've given a lot of different podcasts. You and I just recorded one not that long ago about like how to add to exams and how we can help support as a support team our doctors in exams. And so I thought today, like, what are some things we could chat about that make an exam standardized? Because especially for practices who are considering onboarding associates or maybe have associates onboarded, I think as a team member, I could be speaking, gibberish, or some of you may agree with me or align with me on this. I think as a team member, it gets really confusing and sometimes frustrating chairside when you're used to something and then it goes awry. Or if you can't get used to something because there's no standardization, right? And so we forget in our brains, I talk to practices about this a lot. We tend to not understand that those little areas that could be made routine, where you do the thing over and over again, they cause chaos and frustration and stress in our brains because it's always different and it's unexpected. That's human nature. We're designed to be in community and in routine, to do the same thing. We get frustrated because we're like, I'm doing the same thing all the time, but that's what keeps our mind at ease, right? The like every now and again, those changes. So when a doctor comes in, this is my favorite because I've experienced this. This is my favorite thing to talk about. When a doctor comes in and they're like, all right, let's do this exam. And they sit down and they're like, wow, okay, we put a watch on number 2. I see some shadowing there. And then number 18, that filling looks really cracked. I think we need to probably do a crown over there. But number five is definitely, that's got some decay over there. So we might do a filling there, but let me decide. But number 30 for sure. And I'm over there like, are we documenting the right teeth? Number 1. And my brain can't keep up with where your brain's at because we're not following the teeth, right? I don't care what order you go in, front to back, but it's got to have a routine. This hopping around makes me second guess that I'm documenting it correctly. It gives chaos in my brain, and then there's confusion. So when I think of standardized exams, I think of getting as nitty gritty as that. Like, how are you going through the mouth? And what works for you as a doctor and what works for your team. Britt, what do you think? Like, that's one of my favorite, like, mind-boggling things because everybody's always like, oh my gosh, yes, it drives me crazy, but we don't say it to the doctor. We just kind of keep it to ourselves. But what are some other things you can think of, or do you relate to that? Like, what does that bring up for you?
I mean, for sure, hygiene brain relates to it. I'm like, could you imagine if hygienists started like calling out random teeth and doing perio charting that way?
I would die. I would die.
Like, even when hygienists do that with recession, I'm like, are you sure you're catching everything if you're not going in the same order all the time to make sure you're seeing everything that's there? So like, absolutely. I also think of, so I worked for quite a while as a hygienist in a practice that had 5 doctors, right? So you can imagine 5 different doctors. We got things somewhat systematized, but like I still at least knew like each doctor, like what things were important to them, because it is hard for team members, whether it's 1 doctor or whether it's 5 doctors, when like I think I've got everything set and ready to go for you, and then you want something else, and whether you express the frustration or not, like the hygienist type A in me is like, oh my gosh, I did not do something right. So
you're internalizing it for sure.
Exactly. That I'm like, well, great, missed that one, or should I have had that, or like, why didn't you tell me that? The internal dialogue starts going off. Whereas when we have a set system for how to do things, that's really easy. Again, expectation is the same all the way from like how things are set up for the doctor when they come in. Like I had one doctor that wants wet gauze there for, oral cancer screening, like whatever it is that you need to be set up for success. And then doctor goes in and follows the same, right? So if it's oral cancer screening first, they do the exam, they're looking for the same thing, right? Going in order of the teeth, calling it out for me in the same order, whatever it is that's needed, makes life so much easier and makes team members also feel like they can win because they know what you want. They can give you what you want. And at the end of the day, I don't care. I've worked with hundreds of team members at this point. They all want to do right by you and give you what you want at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. We're all here to please the doctor. Like we are people pleasers to a fault. That's why we're in the healthcare industry. So just use that to your advantage. I think we all think of that as like, oh, I'm a people pleaser. It's so wrong. Like there's nothing wrong with you or the way that you are. Just know that you're a people pleaser, and doctors know you're a people pleaser too, and you're dealing with other people pleasers. So allow them to please you. Give somebody a win. So that's my pedestal. Yeah, let them help you. I love that. So I, take notes. So I'm thinking, I'm listening and I'm taking notes on how you guys taking information from this, because we're super actionable. How you guys can implement something like this in your practice if you don't already have a standardized exam, or maybe there's things that you hear today that you can add into your exam. So I love this setup. I think that's huge. And coming up with something that 5 doctors can agree on, right? Because if you've got to remember then as a hygienist, every doctor wants something different on their setup. Number 1, you don't always know which doctor is coming to you. So doctors, be aware of that. They don't know sometimes which one of you is going to come in for that exam. So having those expectations clear and aligned is really important because everybody then can win. So what does that setup need to look like? I love the wet gauze. Like I think I would think that a lot of doctors could appreciate that idea and a lot of patience.
Some doctors, like in busy offices, and here's where I'm like, team members, whatever doctor wants that makes sense, that like see the big picture and how it makes it easier. Like I've even had a doctor, and it was a crazy busy office, and he's doing 1,000,000 exams, that he wanted a pair of gloves out ready for him to go. And I'm like,
Yeah,
done. If it's going to make your exam quicker and make us more efficient, that is super easy for me to do, not a problem at all. So whatever those little things are that are going to make it easy for everyone and make doctor most efficient, because I tell offices all the time, doctor is your limiting factor, right? There's one or there's always fewer of them, and there are more of us team members. There are limiting factors. So if I can make their time more efficient, they're going to be able to do more for all of us throughout the day.
I love that. And I think something I thought of is like the picture of my doctors walking into the room, going to grab a glove. My doctor that I worked for, the anger on his face and annoyance when that box was empty. And you're just like, oh crap, give me 5 seconds. And he's like, I don't have 5 seconds. Like, I'm going to go do somebody else's exam now because you weren't actually ready for me. And then you're just like, shoot, like, I get it. So I think that's smart, even just to make sure that you've got what you need for him, not even just set out, or her, but that it's there and available. So I love that. So making sure the setups are standardized. Doctors, here's the deal. This is my first action item for you. Schedule a meeting with your doctors if you have multiple doctors. And if not, maybe your hygiene team docs or hygienist, whatever you've got in your practice, and come up with a way that you guys could standardize this type of situation. So if you've got multiple doctors, that setup is going to be key, because you guys need to have a similar setup alignment. And really, I think something you said, Britt, was how can we make this easier, right? And really coming to terms with the why behind something. So if I've got one doctor that's like, I want my gauze wet, and the other doctors are like, that is ridiculous. Why do you want it wet? I personally, you said that, and I was like, dang, as a patient, I would appreciate that, right? I hate the dry, I don't think anyone likes the dry cotton in your mouth. Like, it sucks. Yeah. It makes you feel like you have cotton mouth all of a sudden, and you're just like, give me some water. So I appreciate that as a patient. But those are the types of things that maybe not everybody's in alignment with. So be open to the conversation of different ideas of what an exam could be, and then be open to altering what your preference and style is, so that you guys can come to terms and really just come up with a single standardized way.
And if you have multiple doctors, let me just throw this in, Tiff. If you have multiple doctors, if you have a hygienist who has worked with you 2+ years, I guarantee you they could tell you the quirks of every single one. Or like the assistants can tell you the quirks once they've worked with you long enough, and they've worked with all the different doctors, whereas doctors may not know all those things about each other. So bringing the team in, I like that you said that, or bringing the hygienist into it to say, hey, like what's most similar between everything? Like what would be the easiest way to get it systematized across all doctors?
I love that. Yeah, that's a good idea. And maybe having that, if you're going to have a calibration meeting, maybe having that hygienist or assistant there with the doctors to help figure those nuances out. Because I don't think oftentimes we even know our own nuances. Other people have to point them out to us. So I think that's smart. So schedule a calibration meeting, come together and figure out what your setup needs to be. How is it going to be easiest for you to come in and just GSD that exam? And then I was thinking also things to include in your standardizations to consider. So your setup, but then your handoff. So we've talked a ton about handoffs. Pull some of that information. What do you want that handoff standardization to be? Because doctors, I'm not here to just like harp on you and say you need to do better. This is a full team effort. So schedule your calibration meeting, create what that system looks like. So setup, handoffs, and then what's your routine? So do you start at tooth number 1 or 2, right, and go all the way to 31 or 32? Or are you starting on a different side? Are you starting with teeth? Are you starting with x-rays? Are you starting with oral cancer screening? What's your routine so that it's the same every time? You guys, these action items aren't only going to help you, they're going to help your team. It's going to remove stress, because it's going to increase efficiency, which removes stress in practices. And you guys, it also gives your patients something that they can count on. Because I'm telling you right now, your patients are listening to everything you're saying. And if you're like number 3, number 5, number 15, number 32, number 12, number 9, they're like, one, they already don't know what the teeth numbers are. And when you're skipping around, that doesn't make sense to them at all. It makes more nonsense, than it even made before. they're like coming out of that, like, what are you even talking about? Now you're trying to sell them on treatment, and you're not doing yourselves any favors. So standardize those things. Schedule a meeting, come up with a plan. What's the setup? What are your handoffs? And what's the routine that you're following? Standardize those for the new year and then implement it. Give yourselves like 6 weeks or so, check back in, do another calibration meeting, and see what you're seeing. Like, what are the results? Do you see case acceptance increase? Do you see happier hygienists? What are your hygienists seeing? How are they feeling? What's the overall vibe of it? And see if things are good. Do we need to add to it? Do we need to take away? What needs to happen? So set a calibration meeting for now, create it, and then set a calibration meeting for 6 weeks after implementation so that you guys can test it and then take a look at what the results are.
And with your exams, when you've got a system, right? So not even just looking at the teeth and like what order you look at them, but doctors, I guarantee you, it helps you not to miss things when you go in the same order every single time. It'll make you more thorough with your exams. Also, how you talk about additional services such as aligning the teeth, right? Or cosmetic things that might be an option. When you build that in and focus on if it is the way you want to do it, I really like when it's like, all right, here's have-tos, right? Here's things that are going to benefit you like long term, that are a good investment to make things stable. And here's some coulds, wishes if you want to do them type of a thing. It also makes it easier, like Tiff said, for patients to follow, and you're not jumping around where they're like, well, why are they talking about this cosmetic thing when now they're telling me this thing is like super important that has to get done. Following a flow there as well helps patients, and will, I guarantee you, it will help your case acceptance.
I love that. That's beautiful. And that's an exam protocol. So within your standardized exam, make sure your actual exam and the treatment planning that you're vocalizing your patients is in an order as well. I agree. And I think, like I said before, it takes some of the thinking out, right? Whenever you standardize something or make it a routine. And so knowing what you're going to talk about first keeps you from forgetting things that you wanted to talk about, and it keeps you in a good flow. So I think it overall will help everything.
And I think of it kind of like think of musicians that have music memorized, right? Like once you've got it memorized, they've got the basic things down, then they like add in all these little things that make it sound amazing.
For sure.
Same thing. It's like, all right, get your basics down. So that's always done the same thing. You know the music, you know the notes, you know the cadence to it. And then when you present, you can add in those little things that make it sound even better.
I love that. It's kind of like the radio edit versus the concert edition. And you're like, whoa, I've never heard it like this before, because they got really good at it and they decided to improv a little bit.
And I see their like true talent, that it's like, oh, they just kind of know it. Like they really know what they're doing. Yeah,
for sure. I love that. And then you guys think of yourselves as professionals like that too, because you are that person. So give yourself some credit and some kudos. Awesome. All right. I hope you wrote down those action items unless you're driving. I hope you did not. And then come back to this later when you're not driving and write them down. Go schedule both of those calibration meetings. Come to terms with what that needs to look like and create that protocol. You guys, I can't wait to hear about it. As always, if you need information, if you want help with these things, please reach out. We are here to help you in every way possible. And we love supporting all of our amazing doctors and listeners. So let us know how we can help you. If you haven't already, drop us a 5-star review. We love hearing from you guys. We like to know that this information was valuable to you, because just like I want you to be efficient and not wasting your time, I don't want to waste your time either. So if you're feeling like, I didn't really like that, and I would love to hear more about this, like that's what I want to know. I want to hear more about this little piece that was in there. Tell us, email us, drop us a review. We want to hear from you guys. Thanks so much. Thank you, Britt, for being here. And I can't wait to podcast with you again. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
And that wraps it up for another episode of the Dental A Team podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.